Hi everyone, thank you for coming to our panel. My name is Daniel Reyes. I'm the hermano de la Unidad Latina Lambda of San Lambda Fraternity Incorporated.
Woo!
So,
Yeah.
All right, hello everybody, my name is Gerson. I'm also co-president.
Yeah, so we're very glad that you all are with us tonight, and also this was made possible by Mecha de Yale. They helped out curating this. So yeah, before we dive into the discussion, we'd like to take a moment to introduce our incredible speakers tonight. So joining us today is Jose Perez, who is an accomplished attorney licensed to practice in New York, New Jersey, and Venezuela. He began his legal career in Venezuela before continuing his studies at Syracuse University. With deep expertise in immigration, workers' rights, and litigation, Mr. Perez has dedicated his career to legal advocacy and community service. He is a frequent speaker on immigration issues, a columnist for CNY Latino, and the founder of the law office of Jose Perez. His extensive pro bono work has supported countless immigrants, and he continues to be a powerful voice for the Latino community through media, advocacy, and leadership. So a round of applause for Mr. Jose Perez. We also have with us here today Eric Gonzalez, the Brooklyn District Attorney, a trailblazing leader committed to justice, fairness, and building community trust. D.A. Gonzalez made history in 2017 as New York's first Latino district attorney. With over 25 years of prosecutorial experience, he has implemented groundbreaking reforms focused on enhancing public safety while reducing reliance on incarceration. A Brooklyn native, he has led efforts to address the root causes of crime, combat violence, and expand access to post-conviction injustice. He remains a strong advocate for innovative, equity-driven solutions that make the justice system more fair and effective for all. Please give a round of applause to our two speakers. And just to start off, we'd like to ask you both just to give us a little intro on why you chose the work that the field that you're in, what inspired you to pursue the law track, and what you're doing currently. So yeah.
This should. Yeah, that should. Good evening, everyone. First of all, it's a tremendous privilege to be here with all of you as we discuss this important topic that really goes to the sense of fairness and in our communities. The topic of immigration in criminal law has long been a very complicated and intertwined conversation that really fundamentally goes to safety and fairness. And so it's an important topic. I am happy to be here with my new friend Jose on this topic. I want to thank the brothers of LUL for hosting this for the Yale campus because this is a topic that, quite frankly, I think college students and graduate students need to be very well versed in. There's a lot of community action that I think can be done safely and appropriately and have an important significance. And I think the question was, why did I choose to become a prosecutor, right? Why did I choose the path I chose? I chose the path because I believe that people who have skin in the game, who've been impacted by criminal justice policy and safety and security issues should be at the table making decisions that impact the community. So I think this is very similar in that sense that many people that come from immigrant communities are going to be directly impacted over the next several years of immigration law. So I'm so happy that you guys chose this as a topic.
Hello, thank you. And yes, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for the invite. And it's an honor to be speaking to you about this important issue. It has become even more important now that the new administration, all the persecution and all the harassment that has been happening in the last 90 days. I came from Venezuela. I was actually born in Ithaca when my father went to Cornell, so I was a U.S. citizen by birth. And by the way, based on the oh, there you go. Okay, well, he went to Cornell, so Ithaca. The funny thing about this immigration issue is that on the day that President Trump took power, he signed an administrative order saying that someone that was a son of an undocumented person or a student should not have a U.S. citizenship. So I would not be a U.S. citizen under that Trump law. So because my father was an international student, not illegally, but was legally doing a doctorate in Cornell. So then when I was already a lawyer in Venezuela, I decided to come to the United States to further my education at the time, and my wife was pregnant, so I said I want my son to be born in Ithaca at the same time where I was. So I ended up in Ithaca renting an apartment in the same complex where my father had an apartment, and I decided to become a lawyer because I think law touches everything. Everything that you do in life, even if it's not immigration, if it's corporate, if it's DAs, if it's in the government, whatever you do, if you're sitting down in that chair and the chair breaks, you're gonna need a lawyer to sue that. If you're like eating in McDonald's and you have a tooth, broken, you're gonna need a lawyer for that. So anything that you do in life has been touched by a lawyer. So I think it's important that that was the career path that I wanted. But I chose immigration because when I came to the States, as a U.S. citizen, I didn't speak the language then, and I was able to deliver visa for about almost 6 months while studying for the LSAT, and I was getting paid $3 an hour because, I didn't speak English, so I was treated as an immigrant, even though I was a U.S. citizen. And I was trying to find an attorney to get my wife's papers at the time, who is actually sitting in the back there. And we couldn't find a lawyer in about 300-mile radius from Ithaca that spoke Spanish, that could communicate with us. So we had to go to New York, where we didn't meet the DA here, but we went to New York City. And I said, if I do go to law school here, I gotta choose immigration because there is a lack of representation, there is a lack of people that could help immigrants like myself. Because even though I was a U.S. citizen, I am an immigrant. So that was the reason I chose this path, and I think it has been a rewarding experience. Changing humans, the life of many people in the work that we do, and so I think the only thing that I regret now is not to have come earlier to do that job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to say thank you for that. Your jobs are more important now than ever. So thank you so much for telling us about yourself. We'd like to begin tonight by centering the experience around undocumented immigrants themselves, because they face a lot of fear, a lot of confusion and uncertainty at the moment, especially with a lot of new policies being added every single day. So if I could ask a question to DA Gonzalez, as New York's first Latino DA and someone who has pursued progressive reforms, could you start by explaining the role of DA, District Attorney, in shaping immigration-related outcomes, especially in the context of discretion over charging decisions, cooperation with federal immigration authorities, and how your office balances public safety with protecting immigrant communities?
I think that what I'm about to say may be stunning in a lot of ways if you really think about what I'm going to suggest to you. In 2014, I was the chief assistant district attorney, meaning that I was the number 2 person in the Brooklyn DA's office. The Brooklyn DA's office is the 3rd or 4th largest district attorney's office in the United States. We have about 1,300 employees and well over 500 lawyers. So it's a big law firm if you look at it in any way. In 2016, at the very end of the year, I was appointed the acting district attorney by the then governor Andrew Cuomo because the district attorney had passed away suddenly. And in 2017, I ran for office, won the office as the elected DA, and became, the first Latino district attorney in New York State history. I remain the only district attorney in the state of New York that is, of Hispanic, Latino origin, even though there's 62 district attorneys. So New York State has 62 district attorneys, 1 for every county. So I've been in charge of the office really from 2017. And the very first thing that I did in 2017 is hire an immigration attorney, actually 2 immigration attorneys, and created something called a collateral consequences policy. What's stunning about that was that I was the first district attorney in the United States that openly said that in terms of justice and fairness, we have to look at how a criminal prosecution could impact immigrant communities. It's always been different for immigrants because the federal immigration law can treat almost any contact with law enforcement, especially any conviction, as a crime that could lead to deportation. And to think about that, it really wasn't until 2017 that any district attorney in the United States, there's over 2,000, probably about 2,200 district attorneys in America, had never really publicly said, we're gonna have a policy about how to look at how immigration and criminal law impact each other. And so, quite frankly, I can proudly tell you that today at least 60 offices across America have copied what we started in Brooklyn and have immigration attorneys and actively train their prosecutors how a plea bargain or a sentence to a court on a sentencing would impact communities. And it's very important to understand this, that even in New York City, if a person was convicted of possession of marijuana, which is not even a crime, it's a violation of the law, it could lead to an immigration deportation. And so what we do in Brooklyn is we train our lawyers about what pleas are immigration friendly, meaning that someone like Jose in immigration court could have a fighting chance, and which cases would kind of almost guarantee deportation. My job as DA is, of course, to move us towards a safe community. And so I think about the issues of accountability and what we need to do to keep our community safe. But we also understand, and this is essential to this work, that if immigrant communities are afraid to call the police, if they're afraid to come to court, if they're afraid to serve as witnesses, we'll be less safe. And so a lot of the thinking around this policy was, how do we earn the trust of the community that we serve? In Brooklyn, 1/3 of the nearly 2.7 million people who live in Brooklyn come from immigrant communities. So it's a big number. And so earning that trust is important. So we focus our work around that. At the same time that we try to treat people fairly when they're accused of a crime, we also want to protect immigrants from being harmed and being exploited. So whether it's wage theft or it's some kind of other scams, we also have an immigrant fraud unit that I started that is looking to make sure that immigrants are protected, that they're paid their wages, that they're not exploited. I'll give one example of something that we did a few years ago. And we're thinking, sometimes you're thinking in the Latino context, or you're thinking in Asians who are also a big immigrant community. New York City has a large Black community that are immigrants, mostly from the Caribbean, sometimes from Africa. There was a Black Caribbean restaurant that hired immigrants, and would not pay them their tips or their overtime, and said that if you demanded those extra wages, that they would report you to immigration authorities, and in fact did, and as retaliation for making the claims in court to get their due wages. That's a case that my office prosecuted. There's something in the law called coercion, which means that you're not allowed to harm someone or commit a crime against someone for doing something that they have a legal right to do, i.e. file a lawsuit for their back wages. So we prosecuted the guy for coercion, we got them their back pay and restitution, and we actually sent them to jail for a little while. So there's a lot that we can do to protect immigrants. It's just a balancing act, and we'll talk more about how this has really been important in the new administration.
Yeah, thank you, DA Gonzalez. Mr. Perez, do you think you can share a little bit about the kind of work you do as an immigration attorney? What kinds of cases do you most often encounter? And what are some of the first things you tell clients, especially those who are unfamiliar with the legal system or are facing immigration issues for the first time?
Thank you. The type of practice I do a lot of removal defense. That is when people are placed in deportation proceedings, in removal proceedings, and then we go to court to try to stop or avoid the deportation of these individuals. And the type of practice includes not only asylum defense, humanitarian relief defense, but also, spousal privileges, like, for instance, a petition filed by a U.S. citizen for a spouse who is an undocumented person, or a person that had overstayed a visa, and the person was denied the application at the USCIS level, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, where you file the petitions. Once that's denied, then the person is referred for removal, so for deportation, and that's when we come in. We also do a lot of petitions, and not only work permit, employment authorization petitions, family petitions, and as well as some certifications or employment-related certification petitions. I don't represent either schools, I don't represent hospitals. I only represent immigrants. So only if an employer comes to me asking for an H-2 visa, for instance, that they want to bring someone, I don't represent the employer. So I have made a decision that I was only going to represent the immigrant population and not the employers. And that's what I have been doing for the last, I believe, 12 years at least. So we go to different immigration courts in the whole country. Before COVID, I only did it in Buffalo and Batavia. Batavia is a federal detention facility where the immigrants are actually jailed when they cannot go out on bond. And in Buffalo is the other immigration court that we have in upstate New York or the West Side. In New York City, there is another immigration court, a big immigration court. They have 3 different branches, about probably 80 or 60 judges. But I didn't travel there because it was kind of 5 hours from my house, from Syracuse. So, but after COVID, then WebEx became a thing. WebEx is like a Zoom platform for court, and they have been allowing virtual appearances. So now I have been taking cases in the whole country. And in fact, yesterday we were just in Miami in an immigration court. So we just flew in today, and I was representing someone in an asylum claim, a Cuban descent person that was being removed. So, I think it's important, especially now with everything that is happening, the type of work that we do. The thing is that very recently, I don't know if you saw in the news, the Trump administration threatened now immigration lawyers, and he actually directed the Department of Justice to investigate immigration lawyers and send us to jail for immigration fraud. So, so that's the type of world that we're living in right now, where they are trying to curtail people's ability to defend people, but we'll keep fighting the good fight.
Thank you. Mr. Perez, do you think you can also walk us through what the detention process typically looks like? Because there's a lot of confusion around like what happens when someone gets arrested by ICE. If you can walk us through the detention process from the moment of arrest to what comes next, and what should people do if they or their family are caught in the in this predicament?
Well, the most important thing, I think Diego Gonzalez was talking about helping people in the immigrant community for people that have been target of fraud and stuff like that. It's not to go to notarios or other people that, like paralegals, that they announce themselves, that they do paperwork for immigrants, because usually that's where people loses their money, and because there is a lot of immigration fraud in that sense. So if something like that happens, the most important thing is to go to a lawyer, to a real lawyer, not to a paralegal, not to a notario. Go to a law firm that would help, the family member, the friend, to navigate the system. Because the thing is, the reality is, once the person is in detention, it's difficult to get them out unless you win a motion for bond before the immigration court. And before Trump, that was something that you could do, and if the person didn't have a felony or a significant misdemeanor, we would be able to get the person out for a $5,000 bond, $7,500 bond. But right now, unfortunately, under the new administration, President Trump signed something into law that is called the Laken-Riley Act, which is a Georgia-based law after a Venezuelan killed a student in the University of Georgia. And the law actually provides, and believe it or not, which is the crazy thing about that law, is that if the immigrant is actually even just charged with a crime, has not been convicted of anything, even if it's just a petty larceny or like something like stupid, like didn't pay for a water in the supermarket. Well, I'm actually going to give you this case. It actually happened right now. The son of a client was at Walmart, have a Coke. The mother paid a bill for about $200, and the son had the Coke. She didn't realize that he had been drinking the Coke, and they left. And the security officer stopped the person, and she was charged for stealing the Coke for $3 after she paid $200 for the bill. So they didn't actually give her a chance. They didn't, I don't think they called immigration. Immigration took her. She has been in detention for the last 45 days right now. And under the Laken-Riley Act, that person for that crime cannot go out on bond right now. So that person is called now a mandatory detainee. So that in order for them to go out, it's only if they win their case, or the removal defense case. So they cannot go out on bond for something like that. So, when you ask for the detention issue, how that impacts the persons, we have been telling people, in the social media, to the clients, do not open the door, do not, ask for a warrant before they are able to take you, before you open the door for the people, before you give the information. But then we see videos like the one last week, where the person was actually recording the officer. I'm not going to give you my information, or he showed me the warrant. He said, I'm not going to show you the warrant. If you don't come out, I'm going to break your window. And he just smashed the window, caught her, with all the splash of the windshield or the window, and took her out and left the 5-year-old daughter, who was actually also in the car crying, left the daughter there and took them home. So that's the reality of the situation that is happening on the new administration. So, we need to make sure that we can call a lawyer that will intervene, that will navigate those defenses. But the reality is, when if you have an order of protection, like someone that we had a case that you guys saw in the national news probably, that the person had a protection that could not be removed to El Salvador, and the Trump administration just ignored that and removed the person to El Salvador. So. We're in a very difficult time right now, but the most important thing is consult with an attorney when something happens.
Okay.
Thank you. And there may be a follow-up question related to that, but quite honestly, the best thing that can be done is to safely record these interactions, because generally, when there's some dispute, I would say that, the administration has said that immigrants don't have certain rights, but every person in the United States has certain constitutional rights, whether you're a citizen or a resident or just someone visiting. So the recording is important because it can give a lot of context to the arrest. In New York City and in many big cities, the police are required under law to wear body cams, so you can see the interactions and see if they're lawful or unlawful. ICE does not use body cams, will not record these arrests, and to give the attorneys a chance in court, the filming, especially if lawful, like in New York State, it's lawful and legal to record law enforcement doing that. There are some states where it's unlawful. But the reality is that is the best defense, to give attorneys an opportunity to contest the circumstance of the arrest, which may lead to a bond, or in some very limited circumstances, some sort of petition in federal court, like a habeas. So there are some options out there, but in order to make the case, we need to see it on video.
Thank you for that. And I think a lot of us, students in particular in the United States, we've felt the ramifications with many of our friends being DACA recipients or coming from families with mixed status, and especially having Yale is a hub for many international students, a lot of whom come on visas for studying. And so I think the fear here is just going across all the campuses, especially we saw that at Columbia University in New York. Mohammed Khalil, even though he had a visa and he was legally allowed to be in the country, he was sent to Louisiana, I believe, and he was detained, and the court ruled that he could be deported. And so I think for undocumented students and students who even just have who are able to be here lawfully, what can be done right now to strengthen the protection of those students, to make sure that we feel safe and that we have our friends feel safe?
So what you're doing now is a big piece of this, understanding your rights, how to take collective action without breaking the law, understanding what the law is, because there's a lot of confusion about what's lawful and unlawful. Jose talked about making sure that they have search warrants before they're allowed entry. It's complex. It's not as straightforward as it sounds, because ICE can issue their own search warrants. They call them sort of administrative search warrants. To be honest with you, administrative search warrant that's done by a field officer has no legal bearing on someone's private property, and so you can exclude them. There are rights that you have. Now, they can violate the law and force their way in. This is why I say record these interactions, because it protects you. I want to say this, that this is like really a critical moment, and the fear is palpable, and it's not misplaced, but we have to not let it consume us, because part of the objective, I believe, is to cause so much confusion, fear, distrust, that people will start to self-deport. They want you to leave, and they want people to not feel comfortable and feel so unwelcome that people will start thinking about going back to the countries of origin. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen. Places like Yale can do a lot of things to protect students through these kind of know your right opportunities, how the university speaks to their values, that the students are the priority. There are things that they can do, having the availability for international students, like there's some international students who are getting their visas yanked away from them, and some universities, I don't know what Yale is doing specifically, but some of the Ivies are hiring attorneys to help advise their international students. So there are things that they can do. What did you mention in the very beginning? The mixed status family?
Yeah, I was talking about DACA recipients and mixed status families and how.
So let me just write with that point. It's not a crime. It's not a crime to live in a mixed status family. There's many cases here locally in Connecticut, New York State, but also just federal cases that say you can't be arrested for harboring an undocumented person simply because you're living with that person. So we should take some solace to that. And we just have to continue to remember that we do have rights in this country. They are exceeding their lawful actions, I think, in Homeland Security and ICE, and we have to fight back against it. But everyone who's here has to know that they do have rights. The harboring statute is really designed if you're creating, specifically taking someone who ICE may be looking for, and you obstruct them and you misplace them, and you create you try to create some kind of sanctuary place that they can't get to. But if someone is undocumented in your home, ICE comes, knock on the door, you can. Who are you? Why are you here? You can ask them questions. You have a right in your home. The university has certain rights to exclude ICE from campus. Now, the law says that law enforcement can be in public places, but there are private places. Any place that the university says is off limits to the public, only students or only faculty, that's a place where they can lawfully exclude law enforcement. And so you can say you're not allowed to enter here without a warrant. I'm going to let Jose talk more about warrants. I'm sure he's seen many more than I have. But the administrative warrants are signed by an ICE field agent or officer. It's just basically saying, we're trying to, find a person and go into this place. That is kind of only a civil search warrant. It does not have the effect of law as a judicial search warrant. And here's the important thing to know. If the police came to your house without a search warrant, most of you know that you do not have to allow them in and allow them to search. You're like, well, you don't have a search warrant, you came to my home. The same thing is true for federal immigration authorities. You can exclude them, you can prevent them, you don't have to open the door if they don't have a federal search warrant signed by a judge. So if they only have an administrative warrant, that's no different than if the police officer came to your door with a piece of paper that they signed and said, I'm looking for you. They still have to get a court-ordered, signed by a judge. It'll have the name of the judge, it'll have the name of the court, and there'll be a lot more specificity in that warrant. It says, who they're looking for or the place to be searched. What ICE agents often do is just kind of roaming around looking for someone, but they have no place in mind that they know, that they don't have the authority to search. So let's be mindful, let's be worried about the enforcement, but let's also know that if we do these events and we tell people what their rights are, we can keep the community safe. Because part of this is just meant to be mean-spirited and make people not come to the United States and leave the United States. And so making sure that everyone knows how to keep each other protected is important, and what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. Because I would tell any of you, some of you know my son is here, right? My son is an imam of the fraternity. I would tell him not to interfere with an arrest, because he'll get arrested and charged for obstruction. It's a federal crime. It's also punishable by prison. But there are things you can lawfully do that do not violate the law, and knowing those rights will help keep each other safe. Jose?
And important thing is we didn't know, for instance, or we don't know what would happen in the house unless someone is recording, unless someone is actually able to show the video. We have seen instances very recently in the last 90 days where people have been recording ICE officers outside the doors of their houses, and the U.S. citizen daughter or son is actually recording and say, "What is the warrant?" Well, we're going to show you the warrant, and they break down the door. I mean, that means that, yes, they took that person in, but we as lawyers are able then to file motions to suppress evidence, motions to terminate cases because, they violated those persons' constitutional rights. So, yes, they could choose to violate the law at any time, ICE, Department of Homeland Security, but being able to then tell the story of what happened, we are able to do we have the tools to work and help people. But this is exactly the type of thing that we need to do to educate the community, to have these type of seminars, to do more Know Your Rights clinics so that the people know their rights. For instance, I don't know if you saw very recently, about 30 days ago, the czar of immigration right now saying that in Chicago they were not able to meet the goals that they have to detain people because for the last 90 days prior to Trump getting into power after he was elected, people were educating in their communities not to open the doors, not to give their names, ask for attorneys. So actually he recognized that that education was powerful in the sense that they were not able to do their jobs or what they believe to do their jobs in persecuting other people with warrants, for instance. So, and we're not talking about when someone actually commits a crime. I don't want to be misquoted here in the sense that, well, the Department of Homeland Security is doing their jobs. They're just trying to, to get people in. Well, there are ways to do it. There are constitutional ways to do it. As Diego Gonzalez was saying, even if you're an immigrant, if you're a tourist, you have rights in the United States under the constitutions. There are certain rights for U.S. citizens, and then there are rights that are for all people present in the United States. So it's important to keep in mind that those warrants that are issued by Border Patrol agents or field officers of either Border Patrol or ICE are not valid, are warrants that have no meaning, no legal basis to do anything. So people should not open the door even if they are shown a warrant unless it's signed by a judge. But here, we have a place, Yale, that you have public places where you also have private places like this room. For instance, as I was accessing here, Caesar, my son, had a key to open the door, right? So that then this becomes private. So ICE could be here, they could be asked to leave because this is a private place and they cannot be doing enforcement here. And we will talk in a few minutes about sanctuary cities and sanctuary places, but the fact is, even if you are in a non-sanctuary place, but it's a private place, I still should not be able to get in. So I think that the power of the community is in the education and knowing their rights. And again, many people, the other day we were in a debate where the person said, well, why does it matter to know that I don't open the door if they're going to break it down? Well, it matters because then we can do things for that person.
And again, at a place like this institution, right, the university has a lot of resources, right? So the university can help. I'm sure that they have parts of the university dedicated to helping international students and students with immigration. But you have one of the greatest law schools in the world, up the block. And so there they have immigration clinics, they have young, they have professors and they have lawyers, but they also have all these law students who would happily help to represent and take legal action. And so in a place like this university, and I really want to make this point to all of you again, don't let the fear overwhelm you. There's a lot of protection and a lot of resources here for you, and just make sure that you're aware of it, and organizations like LUL should start to lean in to figure out how would we respond if one of Mano got taken into custody. what would we do? What were the resources that we would tap into? Because understanding how you're going to do that will be very important in getting to a lawyer quickly, figuring out what detention facility someone's being taken to, filing, an action to prevent a deportation or sending them across the country quickly. There are things that can be done, and so, I'm really happy that you have chosen this topic again.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, at this point, we'd like to open it up to you guys for a little Q&A. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask. And yeah, we'll open it up right now.
Right. So for Diego Gonzalez, or both of you, thank you for coming down and speaking to us. It's very important topic. But specifically for Diego Gonzalez, you mentioned having a unit to prosecute, say, like wage theft. That was a concern with the undocumented community. How does your office figure out what undocumented immigrants are needing or what issues they're having if there's that resistance to talking to officers or prosecutors?
So the question, so everyone can hear, is that, how are we sort of interfacing with potential victims of crime if there's really a distrust in coming forward and reporting crime? And so I think it's twofold, and I want people to know New York City has sanctuary city status, and I think we should touch upon it. So it's a little bit of an expansion of your question. What that means is that the city of New York has, and the state of New York have chosen to say that they will not cooperate with Homeland Security, ICE, on civil immigration matters. Many people don't realize that it's not a crime to be undocumented or to not have status. It's not a federal crime to be not a citizen. It's just not a crime. There's civil laws, and so what New York State has said is that we will only work with ICE on criminal enforcement, and it's a very specific category of cases that I think there's like 120 charges that they will work with, but just someone's status itself, New York State and New York City will not work with immigration authorities. My office as a law enforcement agency, and it's one of the largest law enforcement agencies in the state of New York, has to follow the law, right? So everything I do as district attorney will be, pursuant to law. That allows me, in most of the cases that we work with, where immigrants are victims of crime, they're not being charged with any criminal statute. They're just, survivors and victims of cases. And so I'm able to provide all of the services and resources and all of the work that we would give to anyone else. We also, as a matter of policy of the office, we never ask anyone's immigration status. So you don't come into my office and you have to say, here's my birth certificate, or here's my visa, or my green card. Everyone comes in and we provide services. And that is one of the key things to not violating the law. When you house people, if you're housing undocumented people in an apartment building, if it's open to the public, generally you're providing the same service that you're providing to anyone else. You're allowed to do it. That's why churches are allowed to have food drives and things like that, because the services are being provided to everyone. And it's kind of in that same vein that we're allowed to continue to protect all residents of the county regardless of immigration status, because we would be doing that for anyone. Now, if someone is accused of a crime, if their lawyer wants us to know that, they can let us know, because there are certain other protections that we could apply for. There are things called U visas and T visas for people who've been trafficked that can help prevent deportation. I think today it's more complicated simply because ICE has changed the rules of the game. They now look at databases and things that previously the other administrations didn't look at. But we're able to keep our immigrant community safe, quite frankly, because they trust us and that they know that we're never going to report them. And because I don't have to ask immigration status as a requirement under New York State sanctuary laws, I'm not subjected to ICE saying, give me the information on your non-citizens. I have no idea who's a non-citizen. I don't have any idea who is a victim of a crime, who's a non-citizen or not. They come in, they get services, we prosecute their cases, and we've been very fortunate in New York State courts that judges preclude defense attorneys from asking about immigration status while they're on the witness stand. And the reason for that is, again, because it's not a crime. It's not a crime, so it's collateral to whatever they're testifying to. It's not relevant, and so judges in the state of New York do not allow immigrants to get called up generally. I mean, there's always one or two crazy judges who have their own motives. But generally, I can tell a witness that they will not have to answer that question on the witness stand. That my office will object and the judges will sustain it. And if the judge won't sustain it, quite frankly, we will get another attorney to represent them and then have them, because you don't actually have to answer a question on the stand. You have a right to take the fifth. All of you probably heard that. And so we're able to protect our non-citizens from testifying. So the biggest thing is to make sure that they trust us. We do that by having cultural competence, having attorneys and staff who speak the different languages where people come from, and by knowing that, as a matter of law, and I'm not violating the law, I want to just repeat this because I'm the DA, I have to follow the law, but as a matter of law, I do not have to turn over anyone's status to the federal government unless it's for a criminal case, and that is a very limited circumstance. I'll give you one circumstance that comes up. Someone had been previously deported, and now they're back, and if the federal government wants to arrest them because they've been previously deported, then that's a federal crime. But typically your immigration status as undocumented DACA, student visa, green card, has nothing to do with our criminal laws. They're all civil laws, and that's why I find the term illegal to be quite offensive beyond the sense that it others people. It's offensive because it's actually not correct, right? People don't have status doesn't make their presence in the United States illegal as a matter of criminal law. So I'll let Jose talk more about that.
Okay. An important thing about the sanctuary cities and why the DA's office and other governmental offices do not have to report, it's because when you have, it's a chilling effect that has also in the victims process in people reporting crimes against undocumented people. So, but an important piece of the sanctuary cities is, or places is that even if the government official finds out that the person is undocumented, let's say that the person just gave that information, they are not required under the law to actually call immigration and do it. Now, we have some rogue troopers, some rogue officers that they call ICE for translation purposes, and they know what they are doing, of course, and the person gets detained, and everything else happens. So that's part of the problem. And I think an important thing to clarify about the status of these people is when you have individuals like on campus that are on visas. For instance, international students that are on visas here, the main question that has become in the last 90 days when we have seen the students being revoked visas is that yes, the Department of State do have the right to revoke visas of people that have come to the United States on a student visa if they violated the status of the visa. The problem is the Department of State is saying that we are revoking your visa because you were, in a protest. Well, that's not violating my status of the visa. It's because you are deeming that my protesting is illegal. Well, I have a First Amendment right to freedom of speech. So, there should be a process to do that. And the same thing with green card holders. If you're a green card holder, we saw a couple of green card holders being detained. yes, the government may have the right to try to take away the green card, and even when someone commits a crime, and that's the collateral consequences of, on the matter of Padilla, which I presume that's why you created that office in your office, under the Supreme Court. Even though you may have committed a crime, and the government may be right in taking away your green card, the federal government cannot just take it away. You gotta go to a judge, and the judge has to rule, on whether you can actually keep the green card. It's called cancellation of removal, or if the green card gets away, then you can be removed. So there are things in place that protect the individuals and the process.
Yeah, and again, as it relates to keeping people safe, what the sanctuary laws prevent is the federal government from deputizing. Let's say there's 35,000 New York City police officers. It's probably about 32,000 right now, but their head count is allotted for 35,000. They're a little bit under what they want. They want to have about 35,000 full-time police officers. Part of this immigration roundup that the administration wants to do is have local law enforcement serve as sort of deputies, or go around and help ICE do this enforcement, and where a sanctuary city becomes a useful protection for immigrants is that is unlawful in the sanctuary states or cities, right? They cannot use NYPD resources. And also the federal government can't order the state or the city to expend taxpayer dollars to help facilitate those kind of removal things. So those are what these laws do. It's I don't know how many ICE officers there are, or Homeland Security, but it's a very limited number of people for the entire United States. Right? This thought about creating a pipeline. I don't know if you saw the article that they had this. ICE had a conference, and they said they wanted to create like an Amazon-like removal proceeding where they could just round up people and deport folks, just like Amazon Prime delivers. And that's the language that they use. They compared their immigration concept of how do we streamline to make it like Amazon Prime. The only way they can do that is by really deputizing all of the law enforcement across America. And so these policies are important because it prevents them from doing exactly that. It's unlawful. And as Jose said, they're told that they may not cooperate with ICE on this. So what the policy is in New York City is very clear. It comes directly from the police commissioner and the mayor, which says a New York City police officer may not interfere with an ICE arrest. They can't stop it, but they are not to participate or lend any help in doing those arrests unless they're effectuating a criminal ICE investigation, i.e. one with a judge-signed warrant. And so those are very rare. They're exceedingly rare that a judge will give a warrant for the arrest of the person. It's almost always based on some sort of major crime. So like they believe they're involved in terrorism. They believe there's a lot of exceptions. But this is why I am confident that we can keep our communities safe, because in most of the cities, especially here in the Northeast, the states do not provide that. There's a couple of, there's Nassau County and somewhere upstate, I don't know what county upstate, but Nassau County in Long Island are talking about allowing their police officers to work with ICE, and the state attorney general of New York is actually suing the county executives to prevent that. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be mindful, but this is where the sanctuary laws protect us. And the sort of rhetoric on the other side that they're keeping, murderers and rapists and the worst of the worst, that sanctuary cities are protecting, that is not true. because as Jose said, if you're convicted of one of those crimes, you are subjected to deportation. What it's preventing is people from being rounded up, held without bail, because as lately Riley bill now will allow people to be remanded. And so, the stakes are very high, and you should be supportive of government, and your politics are your politics, but you should be supportive of governments that have policies that make sense to you and protect you. Get out there and make sure that you're speaking out on these issues. But this is fundamentally the rule of law. I want you to understand that because I can't emphasize that enough. Both of us have taken an oath to follow the law, but the law provides for legal protections, and that they're lawful, and we're not skirting the law, we're not trying to get around the law, we're actually following the law exactly as drafted and written, and you can be proud to do the same.
Just really quick, I just checked, it's about 20,000 ICE agents, 24,000 Border Patrol, plus other 20,000 enforcement, so it's about 64,000 Border Patrol agents or Department of Homeland Security agents. You can imagine what would happen if 64 plus 30,000 plus, another million police officers would be doing the enforcement, then, that will be, havoc, right? So, but this is what the government wants, it's a panic created with that. So, with that being said, it's important to know that there are some agreements, it's called a 287G agreement, that the government can have with police officers to actually enforce immigration law, and just Florida just entered into those agreements recently. You may be seeing that. They are going to be detaining also immigrants because they are being deputized to enforce immigration laws.
Yeah, and I don't think Connecticut is actually being sued. The Attorney General, I think his name is Platkin here, but the Attorney General is being sued because he refuses to allow that to happen Platkin is the Attorney General of New Jersey. So the Attorney General of New Jersey is being sued. I forgot the name of the Attorney General here from Connecticut, but is also not allowing that to happen. So the state Attorney Generals also play a big role. The AG in Connecticut is also fighting that. So there's a lot of protection here.
Yeah, thank you so much for your advice, really good advice. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So we will be wrapping this meeting up, but I'd like to say thank you again for being here with us and offering your advice.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your insight, and thank you guys for coming. We hope you enjoyed the event, and that was very insightful. So round of applause please for